Hey everybody, this is Joe. We're talking about Marvel Multiverse, and please, please learn from my mistakes. This is another villain support. So it's fairly common for GMs to have characters at lower and mid game who are putting out way more damage than they anticipated. And it really can affect the way that you design your games. Not balance in individual combat, but design. So if I have a character, a villain, that's supposed to be pretty high rank, when do I use him? I had some difficulties running Doctor Doom in my game, and I'd like to talk about running Doctor Doom, what his powers specifically indicate, and how you can use him to create really interesting scenarios. So Doctor Doom is a rank 5 villain. He's entirely mental stat driven. 7 points in ego, 6 points in logic. All the other characteristics are much lower. 2 points in melee, 3 points in agility, 3 points in resilience, 4 points in vigilance. This is going to give him some relatively low defense scores, except for the mental stats, which are a 17 for ego and a 16 for logic. At max, he has 120 points of focus and only 90 points of health. So he really is a glass cannon, if ever there was one. Let's take a look at his powers to see what they are and what they kind of indicate. So Doctor Doom is in 4 power sets. If you exclude the basic power sets, which of course everybody is in, they are martial arts, elemental control, magic, and telepathy. Of these, the standout, kind of strange one is martial arts. Martial arts, he's really only in for 2 powers. They are attack stance and defense stance, giving him a little bit of some added heft in combat when using other abilities. So it's not like we anticipate him throwing punches or anything like that. You can use attack stance and defense stance if you attack with other power sets and ways and means as well. So these work a little bit for me, certainly, but I'm a little surprised that he didn't also have things like brace for impact as well, or do this all day, just to be able to expend focus in order to recover health in some capacity. This is a villain with only 90 points of health, and I can tell you that gets diminished very quickly. When it comes to elemental control, he really only has a few things, but they're going to be his bread and butter for defense and attacking. He has elemental burst and elemental blast, and I anticipate a lot of elemental blasts coming off of Doctor Doom. It makes a lot of sense. He also has elemental barrier. This is going to be an important thing for Doctor Doom. He really can't afford to get hit. So using his reaction to throw up elemental barriers to be able to protect himself is going to be key to his strategy for survival. One thing I want to point out about elemental barrier, it forms a barrier between Doctor Doom and his enemies. And if he was to then use elemental burst or elemental blast, it would hit the barrier. However, take a look at his other powers inside of magic, especially Flames of the Faltine. That is going to attack somebody within line of sight. And so we can imagine that arising from the ground on the other side of the barrier. Therefore, Doctor Doom has a way of protecting himself and attacking people on the outside of his barrier. But let's get into the magic power set a little bit more. So of course we have talked about Flames of the Faltine, allowing him to attack, especially on the other side of a barrier. He also has Dispel Spell. Now, I love this power because you can just end an ability, but it is very limited. It only works with dispelling a concentration power that is inside of the magic power set that somebody else has. So this might come up, but very likely will not. When you get to use it, it's pretty devastating. He also has the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak, which is going to allow him to kind of lock down, restrain one enemy. So he's able to do a little bit of battlefield control while he is operational. But I think we really get into the meat and potatoes of running this character in Astral Form and Summon Portal. Astral Form is a way of Doctor Doom having a version of his mind that enters the astral plane. How much does the astral plane affect your world? Well, if you're running Doctor Doom, I would hope it would affect it quite a bit, that there would be a use for this ability. As we will discover, it is the way that Doctor Doom can interact with characters before he runs into them in person that's actually the interesting part of this villain. So being able to enter the astral plane, have any communications there, or expand that concept in any way you want, that is built right into the character. Next is Summon Portal. Summon Portal is pretty amazing. He can open up a portal to anywhere in the multiverse. And that part of the phrasing I think is important. It's not just here on the planet where he's currently situated. He can move between planes of existence. And that capacity opens up a lot of storytelling possibilities for you. So really pay attention to Summon Portal. It's expensive, it costs 15 points of focus, but it is very worthwhile. Dr. Doom also has a few telepathy powers, specifically telepathic link, allowing him to communicate telepathically, probably with his minions, but potentially with heroes as well. And of course, he has machine telepathy. So this is going to be important for the way that he operates. Speaking of which, let's talk about running Dr. Doom in the story. So Dr. Doom has machine telepathy, and I think this is one of the important ways that your heroes are going to run into him. He has the ability to communicate with and potentially take over any machine he has seen. Well, there's lots of ways that you can have Dr. Doom see or be able to communicate with a machine of some way. This can be cell phones, this can be computers, this can be security systems, this can be the computers inside of planes. Lots of choices here. Having Dr. Doom begin to mess with computers, shut them down, make the world very dangerous to actually move through, to shut down certain aspects of modern life. These are potential capacities that he has, and that allows him to affect the story from a distance, which you really need to do with this character. He's also going to be incredibly mobile. He can summon portals, and as a result of being able to summon portals, this is going to be a guy who can hop all over this world and the multiverse. And I would build in the multiverse into a story regarding Dr. Doom. I think it just adds a lot of flavor and fun to running him as a villain. He will also have telepathic links with the most important villains that work for him and around him. He can have a number of telepathic links, and being able to communicate and gather information remotely is going to be essential to the way he operates. So you have a lot of mobility and a lot of ability to affect the world around your players. And that's going to make him a fun villain to try to hunt down. The tough part is going to be combat. Combat for Dr. Doom is difficult. He would love to use an action to get into attack stance or defense stance, but he doesn't have a ton of action economy to waste. He doesn't do a lot of damage with his elemental burst or elemental blasts, so those are kind of things that keep him doing a little bit of damage, but he relies on his minions. I would imagine minions in three ways. First of all, just people who work for him. Have villains that are maybe lower rank, but a number of them that are on the scene. And you want to find a way to separate Dr. Doom from the heroes and put these minions in the path. Otherwise, he goes down really quickly. But secondly, he has machines. He has machine telepathy. He's going to be surrounded by computers. And so having a way for the computers to be able to attack or make the ground a difficult terrain or move the environment in some way is going to be important for the way that the battle progresses. But the last way that he can use his allies to make the combat more difficult and to be able to perhaps defeat his enemies is the summon portal. He can open up a portal during combat and have villains who were not in the room before step through, and potentially lead for a way for Dr. Doom to escape. So giving him the ability to bring in allies and escape from a space is going to make him a really fun villain to run. Being able to get away from the scene of the crime or bring in somebody particularly terrible is awesome. So use the summon portal both offensively and defensively. I don't view Dr. Doom as much of a blaster, though he does have the discipline powers, so his elemental blast powers are pretty effective. They do a pretty good amount of damage. But doing damage is not the most devastating thing he can do. The most devastating thing he can do is interact with the environment, especially if your heroes catch him in his lair, which I don't see why he would leave all that often. Now, maybe you are building supervillain groups like the Intergalactic Council, Savage Avengers, or Terrible Trio into your game, in which case, build out the entire lore. Maybe you have the Fantastic Four in your game, in which case he would be directly opposing them, and where your heroes come into the game, well, that's how they decide to interact with it. But you can just make him a villain in the world, planning something else, and have the Fantastic Four as just background characters, if anything. He works as a standalone villain at the head of an empire, but having him be just a standalone villain without minions, he's going to go down pretty quickly. I believe that the core rulebook is wrong when it says that you run a villain one rank higher than the heroes. In my experience, that villain goes down very fast. By rank 2, you realistically need to run a villain 2 ranks above the players. And if they build certain builds that allow them to really mitigate damage, you might have to go even farther than that or add more villains. For instance, I recently ran a combat against rank 4 heroes that had multiple rank 6 villains and other minions, and my bad guys went down. It was a fun little fight, but I don't believe at any moment my heroes were in significant danger. So when thinking about running him inside of the story, a couple additional points I would mention. First of all, he has very high ego and very high logic. This is a character who's going to plan incredibly well. Give him a good layer. Give him reasonable defenses. Make him smart enough to be able to foresee some behaviors that heroes might do. Also, he might want to terrorize people. So using his machine telepathy and other avenues that he has to really make the world scary is where you're going to get the most mileage out of him. There's also some opportunities here with his inventor trait. Dr. Doom has a few interesting traits: inventor, iron will, tech reliance, and font of information. This makes him an incredibly smart villain. This is your opportunity to homebrew inventions, lasers, bombs, other kinds of weapons, other interdimensional portals, force fields, anything you can imagine. If anybody can invent them, it's Dr. Doom. So give him some inventions as well and really make the environment the star of any time that your heroes run into Dr. Doom. So those are some thoughts on running Dr. Doom. If you've run him in a game, I'm sure folks would love to hear about it. Otherwise, YouTube is literally made out of buttons, and I hope you press some of them. See you next time.